Hey, welcome back to Backlog Banner. We are continuing our quest to find the very best Best Picture winner of all time. Every week, we get a new film, we pick randomly, and this week we were assigned to watch the 2012 Best Picture winner, directed by Ben Affleck, Argo. We had a war movie last week. This is kind of a war movie. It's kind of not in some ways.
Yeah.
It's about the Iranian Revolution and the CIA plot to exfiltrate six embassy members, Americans from Iran, when all of Iran wants them dead. Very interesting movie. We're gonna have some good discussion about it, but we got to talk about what we decided last week. We got to do our little recap. We got to do it every week. So we watched Platoon last week, and we decided that it should be at number 6 on our list. So we'll just do a little bit of the list. At number 4, we got The Hurt Locker, and then at number 5, Godfather Part 2. Number 6, number 6, Platoon, sorry, and at number 7, French Connection. So today, I am joined by the rest of the Backlog boys. I've got Abram, Tucker, and Tanner by my side in virtual space, of course, to talk about Ben Affleck's movie, which starring Ben Affleck himself in the primary role, but we've also got Bryan Cranston, which he's pretty cool. And then a bunch of other actors that I haven't really heard of.
That was a big fucking cast. That was a crazy cast. Lots of that guys. As Tanner was going through, he's like, holy shit, that guy's in it. You haven't heard of John Goodman, Timo? Alan Arkin?
I think I have. I just not name recognition, you know?
The first, 20 minutes of this movie are just holy shit. Well, after the initial setup section,
Yeah.
that next 20 minutes is just, holy shit, it's that guy. Holy shit, it's that guy. Holy shit.
Yeah. But I think the casting overall very good. A lot of these guys did a very good job.
I'm really excited that we're talking about this movie today. I'm so excited. I'm going to fucking steal the ball. Here's what I want to say.
Why is that, Abram? Elucidate for us why you're excited.
So I've seen this movie before.
Yes, so have I.
And I really enjoyed it. But here's what I want to say, right? So I am a person with very bad anxiety, and I find that movies that are incredibly tense calm me down. Like uncut gems, the fucking overload of information calms me down.
That's the wrong way around.
For me, it's like it operates on the same frequency as my brain, so it calms me down. But Argo, having already seen Argo, knowing this about myself, I was so anxious and tense, I wanted to turn the movie off, knowing what happens. This movie is such a masterful winding of suspense and tension with so much style. I am enamored with Argo.
That last sequence of the plane and the fucking airport and everything.
At the airport?
Tanner's girlfriend was losing her shit the whole time.
So
just every layer and level of someone not quite getting there, of someone accidentally seeing something, the whole thing of just bam, 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 bam. And they keep pulling your nuts farther and farther across the fucking screen until they finally do, okay, we're out of Iranian airspace. Congratulations. And they go ham and they're fucking hugging and kissing, and everyone else on the plane is like, yeah, I guess they can drink alcohol now on the plane. I don't know why they're so happy. But
these are a bunch of alcoholics.
He does drink a lot in this movie.
I want to completely agree with you, Abram. I was thinking after I saw the movie, I watched it with my parents, and my dad was like, can we never watch something like that again? That was too much for me. So we'll have to get a good spin this week for his sake. But I think from minute 2, as soon as that storyboard exposition is done, it's tense, and it does not let up. Every single scene is like frickin', as Tucker said, it grabs your nuts and stretches them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Quote me on that. Put that on a t-shirt.
It grabs your nuts and stretches them. Tucker Hazell on Argo 2013.
Yes. This is a film that I watched for the first time this summer with my mom, who had seen it and loved it. She recommended it to me. We pulled it up. We watched it. And I had not seen anything Ben Affleck had directed before. And I didn't know anything about this movie. So it was fun to get, especially a movie with such an interesting concept, which obviously based on a real story. So a real concept, but just the fact that there's hostage situation, there is intergovernmental cooperation, there's a fake movie being made. You get all sorts of different layers of tension and comedy and creativity working together. This movie is absolutely fantastic, and I didn't necessarily enjoy it as much the second time, because I do think for me, once I've seen a movie before, I'm able to sort of tune it out a little bit. It didn't work as strongly for me the second time, but still, absolutely fantastic film.
I want to take that ball from you for a second because I think that's really excellent. Something I noticed upon a rewatch is the way that Ben Affleck is doing a lot more than just telling a tense hostage story.
Yeah.
He's got the commentary on Hollywood in there. He's got the stuff about intergovernment politics. There's a lot that he fits into this film without, in my opinion, taking away too much focus. I think there's a couple disparate plot threads that feel like they're overloading the film a little bit too much, such as Ben Affleck's relationship with his family, or some of the interpersonal stuff between the hostages that made it out of the embassy. But on the whole, I think the juggling act that Argo accomplishes is why it's so successful.
Yeah. I think that the film benefits greatly from having the Hollywood characters are just great.
Yeah. I will agree that that initial thing of him figuring out that we have to do the whole Hollywood plot line is great. One thing that I predicted when I was watching it with Tucker the other night is the tone of the film doesn't really hold up from one part to the other, which I think is a bit to the detriment. Obviously, I'm not going to say like, well, they should make these stuff in Iran very happy and like energetic, or I'm not going to say, well, they need to make the Hollywood stuff very dreary and serious. But putting the two together, as I understand that they had to do that, the tone was just a little jarring for me. But overall, again, I really like this film.
I think as when you build tension and you release tension in a movie, you can't. It's cruel and unusual punishment to just constantly have people getting stretched, gotten on the medieval rack torture device the entire film. You have to have a couple moments of levity throughout the thing to allow your audience to take a deep breath, to like come back. And the Hollywood scenes for me serve as that. And as a film student and as, someone who wants to be in the industry, it's funny. It's comedic, and there's not very much other comedy in the film. And I think that it is greatly benefited in that you get a moment to breathe while you're in Hollywood.
Beyond just that effect, also, I think it's so cool the way that in real life and in the narrative, these completely ridiculous different spheres intersect. And I think it's at the point of that intersection where there is that little bit of the discontinuity when you're jumping from literally people almost being killed by a firing squad in a basement back to Hollywood. But that's part of why this is such a sticky and engaging film in the first place.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because that's a thought that I had during the film, especially during the, I think it is the scene you were talking about, which they're bringing down the people to, sort of torture them psychologically by operating a fake firing squad. And that's intercut with all this lavish Hollywood party where everyone's in funny costumes and they're reading lines and they're drinking, they're having a great time. And it's intercut with this very serious, the very serious realities of what's happening, 2 continents over.
I really like that scene, actually, now that you bring it up. I thought I thought the cross-cutting really worked in an unconventional way. I was like, oh, this is like, whoa, different parts. We got this very scary, and I thought it was like, holy shit, are these people going to get killed right now?
Yeah.
While the
knockoff Star Wars things.
The
knockoff
knockoff Star Wars, and there's jokes and whatnot, but it's like, one thing is going down, things are getting worse and worse and worse, and the fake movie is getting better and better and better throughout the sequence.
One thing actually about that sequence that I think is really cool and brings it to another level for me, I remember watching this movie and being like, okay, they're jamming the two worlds together, but on the second watch, I actually was able to appreciate it a little more because there's a narration or there's someone talking over it. It's an Iranian woman who is being interviewed about the political situation, and it actually kind of reflects both the situations going on with the tensions in the CIA and American politics, and of course the hostage situation in Iran, and them being connected in that way through this dialogue that this woman is reading. I think that actually makes that scene tied together really well. But actually, one thing I actually have to comment on a negative about this movie. All right, we gotta just like Argo, we gotta do the sine wave. We gotta tense it up. We gotta bring it down. I think that one of the weakest aspects of this movie that I think really could have made a little more interesting is if they focused more on the interpersonal connections with the hostages. They are not very interesting characters. They're not very fleshed out. They say they have backstory. They read a little bit of tidbits, but it's a lot of tell, don't show. about these characters, and you get all these scenes with them, and a couple of them have conflicts with Ben Affleck's character or tensions about the politics, but it's not really delved into deep enough, and they kind of just feel like props that this movie is being made around them, and they're the MacGuffin for the whole thing, but they're kind of just in the end kind of flat and not really developed. And I think if they had given them their own sections to sort of build each other's relationships up and what they're doing there, which of course they touch on, but I don't think enough, and their worries about the whole thing, I really think it could have made it feel a lot more personally connected. Because as it stands, yeah, they're American citizens who are being essentially held hostage over there because they can't get back, they can't leave the house. They're kind of just default American 70s people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of two minds about that, because I certainly felt that throughout the film, and I think it leads to moments where like their objections or their worries don't feel as concrete on a personal level. But I think what's interesting about is the way that these six are just a football for Canada and Iran and the United States, and it serves this larger narrative about the apparatuses that care more about this operation being an embarrassment or a public humiliation.
The national embarrassment line was actually really good.
Yeah, opposed to 6 human American lives that are in the balance, and that tension between Ben Affleck trying to humanize them a little bit more, like when he sits down with the couple and he's like, "Hey, I'm actually Tony Mendez, and I'm from New York," and all of this. There's an interesting push-pull there between him and the people back in the States. But I agree that on a moment-to-moment level in the film, I wish that they had a little bit more to them for the hostages to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd stretch that out as far as to say that I don't think the emotional beats that they tried to hit in this film were very strong at all. There's some offhanded stuff. Ben Affleck has a son that he ends up meeting at the end of the film. But overall, that stuff was A, not in the movie a lot, and B, not interesting when it was. So I think I'd just like to note that outside of making you feel tense in those scenes, it didn't really connect a lot of emotional value.
I would say that those the scenes with the son and the sort of separated wife are kind of not necessary to the plot.
I'd say that as well.
I guess they humanize Ben Affleck's character, but I don't necessarily need him to be humanized for me to feel what's going on for the core plot.
Yeah,
which is it has enough there. It's it's truth is stranger than fiction in this instance, and so I think the core plot is strong enough that you don't quite need to go in and make this B plot that is weird and unnecessary, and doesn't show up for most of the movie.
I actually think that this movie's weakest aspect, aside from those underdeveloped characters, is the times when it is just being a Hollywood movie. It has the really over the top, somewhat almost corny dramatized sequences, like when they're partying on the plane, the music swelling and all of that. There's these moments where it's like, okay, it loses that focused tone, and it's like, okay, no, this is a Hollywood movie. They're happy, the fucking climax is coming, right? It just feels a little predictable in those sequences. And on top of that, with what you were saying, with these emotional beats not hitting, like the fact that the characters aren't connected enough, like you have the weird side plot with Ben Affleck and his son. It's trying to fit in those Hollywood tropes, but they don't service the greater plot, which I think is so strong that they just feel out of place. And it's like, okay, if it's not servicing this main thing, I really wish it wasn't there, and that they had found a way to rework them to fit a little bit stronger into what this movie works so well to do.
Mm-hmm. I think allowing the film that moment of celebration on the airplane didn't take me out of it at all. That didn't feel especially tropey. I agree with you guys about Ben Affleck's son and his family dynamic. I think that is the most superfluous aspect of the film. But I didn't feel that it hit me as especially tropey, even in that sequence. I mean, you got to contextualize this against what both the characters and the audience just went through. I think giving everybody involved with this film from any dimension that respite just for a moment to see these characters like, fuck, we made it out of Iran. I think that was totally fine. And I'm glad that it didn't end on that note. I think that those last few moments after, Ben Affleck talking to Bryan Cranston about getting his star and then seeing him back home being whatever. But I liked that there was more than that plane sequence. So it felt okay to me, I think.
Yeah.
What other points can we touch on here?
Well, I think we touched on the thing of, the supporting actors weren't really much to write home about. The ones in Iran, I as easy as it is for like Alan Arkin and John Goodman to be like the happy-go-lucky, fast-talking Hollywood guys, it's fun. I'm not gonna knock them for doing that well.
They have great one-liners. I mean, what? Argo, fuck yourself? Like, come
Yes.
on, that's
Oh, come on now.
hilarious. That's
Yes.
funny. And then just like getting the look at Hollywood and seeing these old timers, these cranky dudes, just like work it, and like it's all bullshit, and they bullshit the bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of ironic, and it's pretty funny.
I actually think that secondary plot, that second layer that we were talking a little about earlier with the commentary on Hollywood, the fact that it essentially is about the bullshit movie, but then it's comments on the fact that in Hollywood, you can bullshit a movie and you can become successful. You don't actually have to be skilled to get the money. Like, you can kind of just do whatever you want as long as you're confident, as long as you have these connections, as long as you can get your foot in the door, you can just bust it wide open and screw around and make a knockoff Star Wars that dozens of people come to the reading of just because you know someone or because you got a little bit of money. And I think that is a really cool balance to the really dark and tense situation that's over in Iran. Because I mean, that whole scenario is crazy. I don't know a lot about that. I was not alive. It's quite a bit before I was born. But I mean, there's a lot there, especially with the fact that they were able to intercut real interview footage, real news footage of the hostage crisis of mobs. I mean, there's some scary fucking stuff over there. But you get the B plot of the Hollywood drama, and I think they balance each other out pretty nicely. We were talking about this beginning with Abrams saying that this movie does a balancing act, and yeah, I mean, it does a great job at that.
One thing. Oh, sorry. You can if you were gonna bounce off Tucker's point there, you go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say based off what Tucker said is that the Hollywood stuff thematically could have carried the film, and I think that's what's interesting about it too. It operates well. I just looked up the quote. Another film I love, La La Land. They say about Hollywood. It's like I fucking
Not going to do
already.
that one on this show.
No, but it worship Hollywood.
We nearly about did it.
Hollywood worships everything and values nothing, and it kind of rang empty. I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying, but you're kind of throwing shit in here for your own edification. In that film, it doesn't feel like Ben Affleck's doing that here. It doesn't feel like these things are just hollow. I feel like there's an actual exploration to be had here, and he's actually making pointed and cutting things, and he's putting himself in the line of fire too. I think there's this self-reflective element to the film that's interesting and tasteful and actually additive, opposed to just paying lip service to the apparatus that Ben Affleck's in himself.
Yeah, I mean, it is, for about a third of the movie, a Hollywood movie about Hollywood, which is a trope that I'm like, come on, guys, like you can do more than this. But this is integral to the story. You need to have the Hollywood sections to make this work. I mean, because it's like, somewhat nonfiction.
If you're adapting this story, you need to see that aspect of how this plan came to be.
And so the thematic material that Affleck adds in this Hollywood segment through the dialogue and what people think and say about Hollywood works, and fleshes out the aspects of the nonfiction story about the Iranian hostage crisis.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. That I want to say something about the geopolitical things that this film brings up. I think it does a good job, but a bare minimum good job. We've talked about things of this nature when we talked about the Hurt Locker, but I do like that it acknowledges with the what's the opposite of epilogue?
Prologue.
Prologue. Thank you. The prologue at the beginning with sort of like the short intro to the history of like how Iran came to be in this situation with lots of U.S. meddling. We installed a dictator who we then harbored in the United States after he was ousted by the Iranian people. I like that it acknowledges that instead of just dropping you right into the story of like, oh, the people in Iran are angry at America. Because that sort of helps along this very, very harmful school of thought that everyone in foreign countries is just angry at America for no reason. When in fact, I think this film does a good job of explaining like, no, we did bad stuff. And this is sort of us trying to... Argo is a story of the United States trying to pick up the pieces of a mess that they helped create, or that they created in whole, essentially. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I think this film at least acknowledges that history.
Yeah. I do think that I'm not a huge fan of that opening sort of storyboard comic booky thing. It really does feel out of place. I like the thematic tie to the fact that they're storyboards, like Argo has storyboards, but even then, the storyboards that are for Argo are later on in the movie. They're sort of a minor plot point that ends up coming up in the final conflict. But it kind of feels a little bit out of place. I kind of wish that front bit had been found footage, more found footage at least, of the conflict building to ground it a little bit more, because of the fact that it was all drawn and sort of narrated by this ethereal voice. It kind of makes it feel a little bit fairy tale-ish, and that's not what the rest of the movie is. The rest of the movie is very grounded. The set design is so accurate that they're able to intercut it with real footage and it feel like an actual thing. It's so tense. So when you open with this fairy tale thing, it kind of knocked it down. It just went by so fast I wasn't able to really pick it up. So being someone who's not really familiar with the actual historical story behind that, I was kind of just like, okay, well, they're just doing this to set it up. I really wish that had been done a little better. But I think you're right in the fact that it is able to build this secondary commentary on the U.S. isn't perfect. We created this. We were doing this just so we weren't going to be embarrassed. Like, that's a shitty fucking background for the reasons that the movie is doing itself.
To add almost the counterpoint along those similar lines, I like seeing this sort of alternative American heroism in war, opposed to, it could have been just a film about, it could have been, we're gonna fucking jump into the embassy, we got Delta Force here, they're going on the ground, here we go, let's fucking get them.
Like another film that was nominated for Best Picture this year, Zero Dark 30.
Which I'm not a big fan of, but I'm a huge fan of Argo. But I really like seeing this sort of American planning and heroism played out in a different way. And I think the bravery of Ben Affleck and the Americans in this situation, I think, shines through and paints a really interesting story. And sure, America fucked up in a lot of ways, but I think it's also a really cool and important story about what America does on the other side too. Because I feel like a lot of Hollywood leaning and everything, a lot of it's, America fucked up, we're in this war, we screwed up the American troops, fuck them. And I'm not personally, I'm not crazy about that. I like its place, but I also like seeing this side also. I think it's a fun story to tell, and an important one too, I think.
I think it's tasteful is what it is. It explains the context well enough, and then it shows the the light side or whatever of the CIA, a little bit of the inner workings of like the politickings within the Bureau, and shows them in a sympathetic, but also like, it is a last ditch effort. It is, they're really just trying to get these people home, and that in and of itself
it's the last bad idea they have.
Yeah, as the line goes, but the story in its core is undeniably heroic. Even when you take into account, the horrible things that the U.S. did to Iran before the events of the revolution, people, they're in the Americans there are innocent. They don't deserve to die as a result of what the U.S. did as a whole. Yeah. So the story, it works, I think, like you said, within the narrative of like, we screwed up, but here's the silver lining, sort of. The silver lining that we forced ourselves into and then barely got out of.
I actually think that that's an interesting thing that you say, because that's also a point at the end of the movie, right? The fact that we were doing this so it wasn't going to be an embarrassment and so we could get these 6 people out of there, but that it's about who gets the credit at the end. Like that's sort of a secondary narrative that this film is building, is that Canada got the credit.
They got the credit and the blame from Iran.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, there was the shot where they were getting yelled at.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty interesting, because the whole time they're wondering, like, okay, how do we get these people out of there? Like, who's going to get the blame? What if this causes a war? Like, what other things could we do to possibly to get this situation to be better? But at the end, it was just sort of like, okay, Canada got the blame and the credit, but then this whole thing got declassified by a future president, and now we're able to get this story. And I think it's really interesting, all the layers that this builds of the, as I said at the beginning, the interpersonal or international cooperation. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting story on so many levels. It almost sounds fake, and I think that's why this movie works so well. It's like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, there's so many layers of here of like, it's a crazy hostage situation. It's a crazy revolution situation. It's a crazy CIA situation. It's a crazy interpersonal situation. Like, all these things come together, and I think that's why it works so well as a movie that balances all these wacky concepts.
Sure. Do we want to do final thoughts?
Yeah, I think before we do final thoughts, Tucker, do you have the other nominees from this year?
The nominees, or what it was nominated for?
Abram, are you holding up your number?
No, that was from last week. I have
Okay,
thin
good.
paper and a thick Sharpie.
All right, okay. While you guys are looking up, I'll deliver some final thoughts in that. Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot here. The tension of the film really works to its benefit. I had a blanket because it's cold up here. I was gripping onto it with gorilla grip the entire time just because it was had me in that state. And while I personally question the ability of a director to direct themselves as an actor, and so I didn't quite get a whole lot out of Ben Affleck's performance. I felt he was just kind of this stone-faced CIA G-man who, I didn't feel like Ben Affleck as an actor was really doing that crazy, but I think that that's not necessarily him as an actor. It's the dual role as the leading man and as the director that causes that kind of stuff. Because how do you watch a take and then tell yourself what you have to do differently?
Yeah. It's impressive. Because I think the strongest suit of this movie is the direction. The actors do a fine job, and I think the story is well paced and everything, but the fact that they were able to mash all this together is impressive. But this movie was nominated for Best Picture, clearly, and won Best Picture, won a Best Adapted Screenplay, won Best Film Editing, which I think is deserved.
Yep.
Nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Alan Arkin, Best Original Score, Alexander Desplat, who I think also did The Shape of Water.
Yep, and he's done some Wes Anderson stuff as well.
Yes,
It's not his best score, but
Yeah, it's fine. Nominated for Best Sound Editing and Best Sound Mixing as well. And that's the
No best
fucking
director
record.
nomination.
No, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could just touch on filmmaker fundamentals real quick. I think the film is pretty solid in its set. I think the set design is great. We talked about that. It matches perfectly, which is what you want. You don't need to do style. You want to be real. Excuse me. I inhaled some dust. The sound design is works pretty well. Nothing like stood out to me as crazy. There were a couple of moments where I thought the music was like it swelled too much, and like we said, was that dramatic Hollywood moment.
Yeah.
And the cinematography was cool. I felt like it straddled the line between the war photography style of The Hurt Locker and a more traditional film. At moments, it felt like it was going for that, and at moments, it wasn't. And so maybe it would have benefited if it had just decided to stick with a style. I think that it would have worked in either one. Just there are times where like it zooms in really quickly or it like pans around in a shaky camera, like The Hurt Locker. I think you could argue that it was inspired from that in those specific instances, and I kind of desire a more consistent look from a cinematography point of view.
We need to fucking get the goddamn end of this shit, okay? All right, boys, it's time to fucking vote. Where are you putting this?
Time to vote. I'm going to write it down right now.
Okay. Are we holding them up right now?
Yep.
We're going to hold them up,
Okay.
and I'm going to read out what each of you put, starting with Abram, and then going around with me last.
Oh, wait. There we go.
So Abram has it at number 2. Tucker wrote 5. Tanner wrote 4, and so did I. I wrote 4 as well. So that's pretty high up. How are we going to reconcile this?
Well, clearly
boy.
it's at least 4. It might be bumped up to 3.
So it would either replace The Hurt Locker or The Gentleman's Agreement. Gentleman's Agreement.
Yeah. I will have to say, I don't feel like I can, in great conscience, put it above Gentleman's Agreement. That film does so much and is so good that there are things about this that just maybe aren't, quite up there.
Here's what I'm going to do.
Okay, Gentleman's Agreement is a bit basic, but I think that the fact that it brought up that social stigma that we talked about in that episode.
We don't have the time to debate this, buddy.
Nope. Sorry. Yeah, the social stigma. It's cool. It's for the time.
For the sake of our arbitrary time constraint and the fact that my soul was killed after we put Godfather Part 2, wherever the fuck it is, too
It's
low,
at number 5 now.
I will bring mine down to number 4 and just say that I think this is a masterful film from a suspense perspective. I really like the theming. I think it just works very well for the type of film I'm interested in. I would have put it higher, but I would have put other things higher too, and God forbid we went over 40. So let's go number 4.
Number 4. Keep in mind, these are best pictures. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 are just great movies.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the problem we run into here as we develop our list further, is that how do you differentiate? But
Yes.
there we go. Now we gotta, well, not forget our graph. Let's look at it. It's going at number 4. Here it goes.
Whoa. Whoa.
The graph. Awesome. Okay, I've got the number we were pulled up. We're going to get it rolling in a second, and we will find out shortly which film we are watching next week. Let's hope for something completely different. I don't know. What are you guys
And now
hoping
for
for?
something completely different.
What do you want to see?
I'm hoping for Star Wars.
Wow, Star Wars.
Star
Are you
Wars.
playing fucking Yahtzee over there? What are you doing?
Let's
Shake
hope
weight?
for something.
I'm blowing up my dice.
Let's hope for something very chill. So maybe
Okay.
like a Forrest Gump.
You ready? I'm spinning. Whoa, 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 whoa,
I'm gonna see.
whoa.
What if I called Forrest Gump? That'd be wild.
That
If I
would
just
be
called it right
insane.
there.
We got a high number. It's number
hell yeah.
57.
Okay, number 57.
Like the steak sauce.
I can fucking guarantee that none of us have seen this movie.
All right.
1953, directed by Fred Zinnemann, starring Burt Lancaster and Montgomery Clift. This is From Here to Eternity.
I've seen that.
From
Wow.
here
Bullshit.
to eternity.
Don't know anything about that movie, but I think it'd be
From
fun.
here.
I have never heard of that. That's
Yeah, I've never heard of it either.
that
I've heard of
Wild.
Frank Sinatra, who's also in the cast.
Oh well, yeah, I've heard of that guy.
Oh yeah, Frank Sinatra.
Oh, that's the movie where they kiss on the beach. It's the Kiss on the Beach movie. They kiss on the beach.
They
Okay,
kiss
but
on
we
the
will be
beach.
back next week for
Yes,
From Here
we
to
will be
Eternity.
back. This movie is about Hawaii. Looking at it real quickly, we are in for something next week. I don't know what it's gonna be, but next week we'll be back talking about From Here to Eternity from 1953, directed by Fred Zinnemann. Here on the quest for the bestest, our list will expand. We will watch it. We will decide on another movie, and I mean, I don't know. We had a great discussion today.
Yeah,
Who knows what this movie is like? Not me.
they kiss on the beach.
They
Pretty
kiss
good.
on
You guys
the
are
beach.
gonna like it. You're gonna
Okay,
like
everyone
it.
thinks we're gonna like it. We're in for something good, and that means you are in for something good too when you hear about us talk about it next
Oh,
time on the
shit.
quest for the bestest. All right, thank you, fellas, for joining me. We've had a great time discussing this. This is a fun movie to watch, even though it made me want to poop. And
Thank you, Ben Affleck, for giving me healthy bowel movements.
yes,
Before we leave, quickly, if you found our faces grating, if you think that the physical
Oh.
presence here is annoying,
I know I
Timo
do.
Nelson,
Yeah.
the man of the fucking hour, has a set up over at Anchor FM, so you can go over to your favorite podcast service as well.
it's
and
on
check out
all
the
of
show.
them. It's
Sure.
on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, radio. It's on every single friggin' one you can think of. So yeah, if you want to, you can go check it out there and listen on your phone, in your car while you're driving. I highly recommend while you're driving. We're all out of time this week. We'll be back talking about From Here to Eternity. It's been great discussion. See you next time. Peace, brothers.
Goodbye. Bless you.
Where did I put it?
Tucker has maybe the least clothes out of him, Jenny, and I, and he has the fucking biggest closet.